Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is a new form of Jew hatred. Jew hatred in the United States has been rising and rising and rising. And just when you think it can't rise any higher, Jew hatred reaches a new height. Ilan Omar, the Democratic Congress representative from Minnesota, has played a significant part in illustrating just how easy it is to pronounce hateful tropes against Jews and then proclaim, "I did not understand the words." An original member of the Squad, the group of extremely progressive and left-wing members of the U.S. Congress, Omar asserts that she does not hate Jews. In my opinion, methinks the lady doth protest too much. She blithely tweets hateful canards and then, when challenged, is quick to reply that she really did not understand the trope, or that she never knew that the phraseology was hateful, or that the cliche she chose was actually a long-standing anti-Jewish slogan. Ilan Omar came to the United States with her family in 1995. She was 13 years old. The family made their way from New York to Virginia and then to Minneapolis, now her home state. Anyone who has heard the representative from Minnesota speak can attest to her exceptional command of English, including her use of idioms and expressions. Whatever you may think of her, Ilan Omar is a very articulate speaker in the English language. In a recent interview with Dana Bash on CNN, Omar was asked to explain earlier statements and tweets she had made, anti-Semitic statements she had made, including statements about Jews hypnotizing the world. Bash, the interviewer, is an affiliated Jew. Seated next to Omar was the Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, also an affiliated Jew. Omar's on-air, on-the-record response was that she had no idea that there was a long-standing tradition of Jews being baited with canards about money. Can you imagine that? She said, and this is the quote, "I wasn't aware of the fact that there are tropes about Jews and money," unquote. And then the consummate politician added, quote, "That has been a very enlightening part of this journey," unquote. And then she turned the whole conversation around and became the victim instead of the perpetrator. Her logic went something like this. Because I, Ilan Omar, was unaware of these canards, I now feel unjustly attacked, and it's wrong of you to think that I have an anti-Jewish bias. Her exact words were, "To insinuate that I knowingly said these things when people have read into my comments to make it sound as if I have something against the Jewish community is wrong." Well, Representative Omar must think that we, the Jewish people, are morons, neanderthals, nitwits, nincompoops, half-wits, blockheads, and dunces. For someone who claims that she knows nothing about anti-Jewish tropes, she is very adroit at delivering them. Nobody uses the expression, "it's all about the Benjamins," when speaking about Israel and thinks that they're giving the Jews a compliment. To the uninitiated, the reference is to the image of the Benjamin Franklin, which appears on every $100 bill. Nancy Pelosi, then Speaker of the House, justified Omar's statement saying that Omar did not understand the weight of her words. That's the quote, "the weight of her words." I beg to differ. It seems beyond belief that Representative Omar is so unaware that even after numerous conversations that were supposed to enlighten her as to the nature of Jew hatred, that the tropes of Jews and money never came up, not once. Nobody tweets, as Ilan Omar did in 2012, that, quote, "Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel," unquote, without knowing exactly what they're saying. When asked in an interview about the tweet and if she understood that it might be offensive, she responded, and I'm quoting again, "I don't know how my comments would be offensive to Jewish Americans. My comments precisely are addressing what was happening during the Gaza war, and I'm clearly speaking about the way the Israeli regime was conducting itself in that war," unquote. I wish that Ilan Omar would own her statements. I wish that Ilan Omar would own up and accept the title of purveyor of Jew hatred. I wish she would, but she won't do it. Not just because she's a politician, but because that's her style. And because she's a member of the Congress of the United States of America, her words, even when explained away, carry weight. She lends credence to others who share her vehement hatred of Jews and Israel. She teaches them how to couch their hatred in a more acceptable way. Do as I do, say as I say, and what you say becomes more acceptable. And if you get called on it, simply reply, I did not know that these words were a problem. In other words, the attack against Jews and Israel is valid, not just in her eyes. It's only the words that used that were wrong. Ilan Omar is smart. She's savvy, and she's very dangerous. And she is clearly someone who hates Jews and Israel. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from Ynet. It was published on January 31st, 2023, and it was written by the mayor of Jerusalem, Moshe Leon. The column is entitled, Palestinian Incitement to Terror is Another Front for Israel. Opinion. In an exclusive opinion piece, Jerusalem mayor says incitement is a strategic threat to Israel's security, transforming young, promising Palestinians into murderers, while incitement online no less dangerous than guns. The mayor of Jerusalem makes a very important point. That is, raising children to become terrorists is no less dangerous than the cachet of weapons. The mayor begins his column referencing the Friday night massacre outside a Jerusalem synagogue. I attended 3 funerals in a matter of hours between Saturday evening and Sunday night, and it did not get any easier. On the contrary, from one funeral to the next, the extent of the tragedy would only become clearer. Seeing families falling apart amid their terrible loss and watching parents grieve over their dead children was just incomprehensible. The banality of evil is repeated again and again. The mind is unable to grasp how a vile terrorist was able to kill Ilya Sosnansky in cold blood, a young man who was all love. How he could have shot Rafi ben Eliyahu, who only tried to help 14-year-old Asher Natan, who was grasping for air before he died. How could he then turn his murderous gun on Eli and Natalie Mizrahi and on Irina Korolayeva? Moshe Leon explains that this is not natural. It's not natural to want to go on a murderous rampage. It's not natural at all. This terrorist was taught to murder, he writes. This terrorist was not born a murderer. He may have begun his life as a productive and positive member of society, but once he was caught in the fire of incitement, his heroic death was determined. Incitement is a one-way street, and the terrorist was a product of a systematic brainwashing that produces such murderers. The celebrations in the Palestinian neighborhoods in Jerusalem were an indication of the support for his actions. Among those cheering the massacre was the next terrorist who may still not realize what he is to become. Moshe Leon now explains that the second terrorist, the 13-year-old who attacked a father and his son on the Sabbath day, is a product of the same educational environment. He writes, the 13-year-old boy who carried out the shooting attack, which severely wounded 2 Israelis at the entrance to the city of David in Jerusalem, just a day after the synagogue shooting, was also a victim of the same social experiment. He had been exposed to the Palestinian education system from a young age, a system that embodies a well-oiled incitement machine and promotes murderous values with the same ferocity it teaches math and reading. It glorifies bloodshed and the use of arms, leaving him with few options. Mayor Moshe Leon asks a critical question. He asks, how can a society raise these killers? How is it possible? He writes, Palestinian society must ask itself how it was able to raise such monsters. It must wonder if, in the name of a national struggle, it had lost its humanity. A society that turns a 13-year-old boy into a murderer cannot claim innocence. We tend to treat incitement lightly. Over the years, some Israeli groups have refused to see it as a threat and demand answers from them. These groups have told us that incitement is used for internal political purposes and seeks to unite Palestinian society. They called it a different mentality. But in the age of social media, incitement online is akin to the use of dangerous weapons. It's a powerful engine that can motivate a young person who has his whole life ahead of him to sacrifice himself while taking the lives of innocents. Moshe Leon now gives a proposal, a solution, but it may not be practical. He concludes his column in this way. Perhaps the solution would be transferring tens of thousands of Palestinian students into the Israeli education system, something we've already adopted in Jerusalem, which would reduce their exposure to incitement. Perhaps a concentrated effort to educate the Palestinian public would make a difference. Incitement is the most effective mechanism to produce murderers out of women and children. We must stop and observe it for what it is, the greatest strategic threat to the security of Israel. Leon is correct, but in order to bring about that change, or any change at all, both the Palestinian leadership and the people need to want to change. And I do not see that happening, certainly not anytime soon. Next up is an editorial from the Jerusalem Post, and it's dated the 5th of February 2023, and it's entitled, "Decision to Remove Ilan Omar from Foreign Affairs Committee Was Overdue." Editorial, subtitled, "What makes Omar particularly dangerous is that while she spews blatant anti-Semitism, she pretends not to be an anti-Semite." This editorial complements our background briefing that I gave earlier at the start of the show. The editorial begins this way. On Thursday, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to remove Representative Ilan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. The vote was approved along the party lines, 218 to 211. The decision came after Republican Congressman Max Miller, one of two Jewish members of the GOP in Congress, submitted a resolution to remove Omar over her past comments against Israel, as well as the use of anti-Semitic tropes. Foreign Affairs Committee members are regarded as credible emissaries of American foreign policy, Miller said. Their words have significant weight in guiding our relations with other countries and are relied upon by world leaders, most importantly, our allies, such as Israel. Congresswoman Omar has attempted to undermine the relationship between the United States and Israel, one of the most important strategic alliances we have. She has disqualified herself from serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee. It was a decision that was long overdue. Omar has repeatedly shown over the last few years that nothing is beneath her in her attempts to vilify the Jewish people and the State of Israel. In 2019, she suggested that Israel allies in the United States were motivated by money that they received from AIPAC rather than principle, tweeting, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," a reference to the $100 bills. A short time later, the Minnesota Congresswoman accused Jews of having dual loyalty in the United States. I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it's okay for your people to push for allegiance to a foreign country. She added, I wanted to ask, why is it okay for me to talk about influence of the National Rifle Association or fossil fuel industries or big pharma and not talk about the powerful lobbying group that is influencing policy? And last summer, she compared Israel to the Taliban. We must have the same level of accountability and justice for all victims of crimes against humanity, Omar wrote in a tweet. We have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the United States, Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. What makes Omar particularly dangerous is that while she spews blatant anti-Semitism, she pretends not to be an anti-Semite. That is what she did earlier when she defended previous comments she made that were criticized for their anti-Semitic overtones, by claiming she was not aware that insinuating that Jews wield influence or power was a form of anti-Semitism. I certainly did not or was not aware that the word hypnotize was a trope. I wasn't aware that the fact that there are tropes about Jews and money. That has been a very enlightening part of this journey, Omar told CNN's Dana Bash, when asked what she has learned from her time in Congress. The message that Congress sent this week by ousting Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee sends an important message that this type of rhetoric will not be tolerated and that there is a price to pay for anti-Semitism. It also comes at a crucial time when anti-Semitism is on the rise and on the heels of one recent report, for example, showing that 2022 saw a significant increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes throughout New York in particular and the United States in general. In the Big Apple, for example, attacks on Jews reportedly went up by 41% last year. In another report, the School Watch Initiative of the Israeli American Council, the IAC, has reported a rise of hundreds of percents of complaints on behalf of Jewish children on anti-Semitism in schools. Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff wrapped up visits this week to Germany and Poland, where he held meetings to discuss ways to battle anti-Semitism. Let me be clear, words matter, Emhoff said last month. People are no longer saying the quiet parts out loud. They're screaming them. We cannot normalize this. We all have an obligation to condemn these vile acts. We must not stay silent. There is no either or. There are no two sides. Everyone must be against this. Emhoff is right, and that is what Congress showed by removing Omar from the prestigious committee. We hope the lesson will be learned. Well done, Jerusalem Post. There is very little I can add. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 4 cartoons today and then a series of great one-liners about society and about aging. First up is a cartoon of a young child passing through the security screening at a public school. The alarm sounds and the guard says, "Halt! Is that a book in your backpack?" The irony is that books are almost non-existent in schools, and young people just don't read books anymore, certainly not the way they used to. That is indeed scary. Next up is a cartoon poking fun at Chicken Little. Remember Chicken Little? The sky is falling? Chicken Little is looking at many graphs and says, while not completely falling, leading indicators suggest the sky may in fact be weakening. Any economists watching will certainly have enjoyed that cartoon. Now a cartoon that pokes fun at the confluence of unemployment and AI, artificial intelligence. We see a room which has 3 people seated waiting to be interviewed. And in the center of the room are 2 robots. They're shaking hands. One robot says to the other, "You're hired." The 3 humans look dumbfounded and rather upset. One of them curses and mutters, "Artificial intelligence?" That's the future. This last cartoon is a farewell tribute to TV actress Cindy Williams. The cartoon is titled Cindy Williams, 1947 to 2023, and then the phrase Shlemiel Shlemazel, Hafsen Pfeffer Incorporated. Cindy Williams and Penny Marshall were co-hosts in a great fun comedy called Laverne and Shirley. The show ran from 1976 to 1982. It ran for 159 episodes. It was one of the spin-offs of the wonderful series Happy Days. On the program, Laverne and Shirley would often link arms and skip down the street, sing-songing those words. That was the opening of each episode. It was an enjoyable TV back then.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Shlemiel, Shlemazel, Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated.
We're gonna do it. Give us any chance, we'll take it. Risk any rule, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way, yes, our way. Make all our dreams come true for me and you.
Next up is a series of one-liners, and I hope they will make you laugh the way I laughed when I first read them. Here goes. Could ChatGPT replace rabbis and halachic decisors? I don't know. I used to be able to do cartwheels. Now I tip over putting on my underwear. I hate it when I see an old person and then realize we went to high school together. I told my wife she should embrace her mistakes, so she hugged me. That one I like a lot. My wife says I only have 2 faults. I don't listen and something else. At my funeral, take the bouquet off the coffin and throw it into the crowd to see who's next. That's funny. I thought growing old would take longer. Here's an interesting one. Scientists say the universe is made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. They forgot to mention morons. The adult version of head, shoulders, knees, and toes is wallet, glasses, keys, and phone. I thought that was very funny. All of them. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. A huge earthquake has rocked the Middle East. Thousands have died and many more people in Syria and Turkey are yet to be found. Israel has confirmed that it received a request through a third party, probably Russia, for assistance with earthquake relief in Syria. Israel replied that it was prepared to help. This is a rare example of cooperation between these enemy neighbors. While delivering a speech, Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledged that he had already ordered Israeli aid for Turkey, which was the epicenter of the earthquake, and would do the same for Syria. In a rare overture to one of Israel's avowed enemies, the Prime Minister said, "I ordered to send, at the request of the Turkish government, rescue teams and medical aid. Since a request was also received to do this for many victims of the earthquake in Syria, I instructed to do this as well." Netanyahu did not elaborate on who made the request regarding Syria. When asked, an Israeli official said, "The Syrians." Asked as if this referred to opposition members or President Bashar Assad's government, the official said only, again, Syria. Turkey's intelligence agency arrested a network of 15 Islamic State, ISIS, operatives who planned to carry out terrorist attacks against consulates of Sweden and Holland in Istanbul. The attack was intended as a response to protests in which Qurans were burned. The report, which came from Hurriyet news agency, also said that the operatives planned to carry out attacks against synagogues and churches in Istanbul. After interrogating the terrorists, Turkey reported that they are certain that the terrorists were not connected to a larger cell operating in Turkey. Israeli judo athletes are once again dominating international competitions. Israeli judoka Gili Sharir won the 63-kilo gold medal at the recent Paris Grand Slam judo tournament. She won a convincing victory after dominating Japanese judoka Nami Nabekura in the final. Her victory, the beaming Israeli champion said, "I am really happy to have been able to win my first Grand Slam gold medal after a very long and difficult day. A big thank you to my amazing family and good luck to all the competitors tomorrow." Another Israeli competitor, Geffen Primo, won bronze in the 52-kilo category after beating Brazil's Larissa Pimenta. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei pardoned tens of thousands of prisoners. Iranian state media reported that almost all of those prisoners had been arrested in recent anti-government protests over security-related charges. According to the official statement, prisoners not facing charges for spying for foreign agencies, having direct contact with foreign agents, committing intentional murder and injury, committing destruction and arson of state property, and not having a private plaintiff in their case will be pardoned. According to Irana, activist news agency, about 20,000 people have been arrested over anti-government protests carried out across the country that were sparked by the death, while in police custody, of Masa Amini in September of last year. Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen said that Israel and Sudan will sign a peace deal this year. Cohen made the announcement after returning from a visit to the African country where he met with Sudanese leadership. Sudan joined the Abraham Accords in 2021, but due to the political situation in Sudan, did not yet normalize relations with Israel. It's soon to be complete. Shevach Weiss, former Speaker of the Knesset, has passed away. Weiss was 87 years old. Shevach Weiss was a member of the Labour Party and an MK for 18 years. A Holocaust survivor from Poland, Weiss also had the privilege of serving as Israel's ambassador to Poland. On November 4th, 1995, a day Israelis will never forget, Shevach Weiss was on the stage at the peace rally in Tel Aviv next to Shimon Peres when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Did you know that Jewish tradition, one of the greatest honors that one can have is to deliver a eulogy? Today alone, we've already spoken of Shevach Weiss, former Speaker of Knesset, and about actress Cindy Williams. In Hebrew, the word for eulogy is hesped, eulogy. For example, the first hesped, eulogy, that we have in Jewish tradition is the eulogy that Abraham delivers for his wife Sarah. Now it's time for me to eulogize a giant. It's time for me to eulogize a man close to all our hearts, a man who changed the world. Rabbi Marcus Gallup lived his dreams. This network, JBS, is a large part of his dreams. He dreamed of Jewish TV programming, of Jewish content. He would say, not old reruns of the Goldbergs or Soupy Sales. He made his dreams come true. He brought JBS viewers substantive and interesting ideas and introduced his audience to great people, wonderful, intriguing characters. Rabbi Gallup brought it all, first through Shalom TV and then through its rebrand, Jewish Broadcasting Service, JBS TV. Rabbi Mark Gallup loved learning. He loved mastering a subject and then delivering it to you, the viewers. Mark and I came from very different worlds. He was ordained a Reform rabbi, and I am an Orthodox rabbi. We never argued about these issues, never. We discussed differences. He respected differences and appreciated them, as do I. We first met on the basketball court in New Jersey in the early 1980s. I was brought in as a young ringer on a team of what would turn out to be some of the most dynamic Jewish educators and leaders of our generation. Mark loved sports with the same passion he brought to everything he did. It was a one-time meeting in the early 80s. The next time we met decades later would be in the Shalom TV studios. Mark became a friend, a trusted friend, who trusted me to join with you each week as we do some thinking out loud. Maimonides comments on the rabbinic requirement to acquire a friend. He says it is not easy to find a trusted friend, but when you do, the friendship will inspire. So true. Mark Gallup, Rabbi Gallup, is no longer in our world, but he will forever be in our hearts. Tihei Nishmato Baruch. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.